Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another Netflix review, and today I'm going to be talking about Basma. Basma is a Saudi Arabian drama that tells the story of its titular character Basma, a PhD student studying abroad who decides to return home to visit her family after being away for 2 years. Upon arriving home, she greets her family with hugs and smiles, and all seems to go well at first. However, it's not long after when Basma discovers her father is missing from the house. She finds out her parents divorced, and her father is living in seclusion in a separate home. She decides to stay with her father to reconnect with him during her stay, during which she comes to learn the truth of what happened to him while she was gone. I have to be honest and say this is one of the slowest, most ordinary plots I've experienced in a drama. It starts off well enough, and when it actually is dramatic, it's a thought-provoking experience, but it's bogged down by such slow pacing and so much filler that it ends up feeling more like a documentary than a drama. I'll start by saying that Basma's actress does a good job in her role. She finds her life turned upside down after what was supposed to be a relaxing vacation, and not only has to pick up the pieces and put things together again, but try to understand what went wrong. It's an unfortunate situation that our actress does a good job conveying her character's pain with. Seeing her try to reintegrate herself back with her family, who she spent so much time away from, and try to bring back some sense of normalcy together again is an admirable thing. And even though it weighs heavy on her, she continues doing her best to make things better. There's a lot of issues with this movie which I'm about to get into, but at least Basma made for a good anchor to keep the story afloat. However, as enjoyable as Basma is, the story is ultimately what holds the movie back, and that's largely due to the fact that there isn't really much of one to begin with. It is there in the beginning, but then it sort of just fizzles out and goes wherever it feels like, which leaves the characters feeling aimless. It's great that Basma interacts with so many different people throughout the story, as it shows how big and divisive a family unit can be, but none of them hold any real weight to what happens in the story. They're kind of just there and interact with Basma whenever the script calls for it. Random characters will even drop in out of nowhere in a scene, cause even more confusion, and then are gone and never appear again after that. Even though it feels like Basma has a deep connection with everyone she's with in the movie, the audience is missing that connection. So as a result, I didn't really care about any of the other characters. There's only a few characters that stood out apart from Basma, the most important being her father Adley. His eccentric mannerisms give him a lot of personality that make him stand out more, but it also adds to the story, as it becomes more apparent why his condition affects his standing with everyone else in the family, and I enjoyed seeing how he and Basma bonded over the course of the story. While the relationship is definitely the strongest aspect of the movie, it's not without flaws. The movie makes hints toward his past life as a respected doctor, and how he's dealing with different ailments, but it doesn't take the time to explore these parts of his character. It's a missed opportunity made more frustrating from the amount of focus it puts into the other tedious subplots. An example of this is the romantic relationship Basma builds with some random guy named Malik. Their friendship and how it transitions into something more is explored a little bit, but it's just not interesting enough for me to care about what happens between the two. All it does is take focus away from the more important stuff, which is what happens between Basma and her dad. And that's what the majority of this movie is like. Once the first 10 minutes are done and the premise kicks off, it's just one random scene of meandering dialogue after another. There's no solid narrative structure in place, it's just one unrelated event after the next, and it's so boring. To an extent, I can see why the movie is like this. It shows how ordinary the family dynamic can be with the way everyone talks to each other about everyday subjects. It adds an element of realism that could make the drama feel more intense, but unfortunately it just doesn't exist. There are hints of issues between Basma's dad and the rest of her family, but the longer the movie goes on, the less prominent they become. Basma's other relatives don't even appear much in the rest of the story until closer to the end, and by that point I was so fed up with the tedium I didn't care anymore. Parts of this movie's relaxed nature do help with its presentation somewhat. It at least feels like a vacation, which again is helped by the more realistic vibe of the story. It's just a shame that the lack of ongoing conflict makes it such a chore to sit through. I also like the lavish production design, which I think is a highlight of any Arabic production that I've seen on Netflix. There's just something appealing about how clean everything looks, and there's a good amount of effort put into the family gatherings and photos on walls to make everyone look like a tight unit, while still implying some friction whenever Adley's involved. Aside from the little things though, the entire movie has a ton of wasted potential. Its messages about re-exploring one's roots, finding meaning in them, and moving into the future with confidence are admirable, but they're examined at such a basic level that it's not worth talking about much in depth. Even the effects of separation and reintegration back into families get shafted to the wayside when there's so much randomness to everything going on. Some of these random scenes are enjoyable enough, but it gets to a point where it's just too much, so the lack of meaningful content really hurts this movie in the long run. Overall, Basma is a mediocre family-themed drama that doesn't fully explore its themes in the way it should. If you like dramas centered around family topics and you can tolerate aimless plots, you might enjoy checking this out, but that's a big might. I don't necessarily think this movie is bad, but there's definitely something wrong with how it was designed from the outset. Basma as a character was barely enough to keep this movie's story alive, and while it has good intentions, her story deserved a lot better than getting sidetracked by everything else surrounding it. What did you think about this movie? Were you as disappointed in it as I was, or were you intrigued by how unconventional it was? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Basma. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the American crime comedy, Hitman. Bye bye!